I'm LeGrand-Elliott.
I'm Cindy AYERS-ELLIOTT.
And we have a brand new show called Ag and Culture. We'll be discussing all things agriculture.
But more specifically, how it affects farmers and ranchers of color with national and local guests.
And of course, we're talking culture, food, wine, health, politics, education, and so much more.
Join us for informative and fun conversation with guests from all over the country.
It's a fresh new show, Ag and Culture, every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. on the East, and 7 a.m. on the West.
Watch us on our YouTube channel, MS Footprint Farms.
And on WeBelieve.global. Good morning. It's episode number 5. Welcome to Ag and Culture this morning. How are you, Dr. Ayers, my lovely co-host?
Good morning, LeGrand. I am excellent today and always excited to be here.
Of course, we're still celebrating Black History Month.
Yes, every month is my Black History Month, and I celebrate.
Absolutely it is. And for everybody who's just their first time joining our show, Ag and Culture is all about exactly that. It's agriculture and culture. We'll talk food, wine, but most importantly, we're going to talk all things agriculture and how it affects the Black community.
Absolutely. And what's so important about this show is that we're going to bring you facts, details, but we always say to you and everyone, always read and research.
That's right.
One of the best things we can do is listen, but also go and verify. But today, I'm extra excited, LeGrand.
Yes.
You know why?
Why?
I have my hero that's here.
No, our hero is here.
Yeah, okay, our hero and a living legend.
And we'll save it. We'll save it. It's a living legend.
Hurry.
I can't wait. Can't look out of the bag. We gotta do the real stuff first, right?
Coming down.
So we want this as a very interactive show. So we definitely want to make sure that all of our friends and subscribers, Instagram, Footprint Farms, Facebook, we're live right now. Hello, good morning, everybody. We're live. Facebook Farms, Footprint Farms, and then the website is footprintfarms.com. We may take some calls today, 800-492-5186. And we can't leave out our title sponsor, Heifer International USA. For over 75 years, they have been helping small ranchers and farmers have a sustainable lifestyle by giving them different opportunities to produce cattle and vegetables and anything else they're growing via agriculture.
Absolutely. It's great people, salt of the earth, and truly makes a difference, not just in the U.S., but around the world. But LeGrand, I have something else for you today.
What you got?
Usually this is a 30-minute show.
Yes.
And we're always happy and proud of 30 minutes, but guess what's happening from this day forward every Tuesday?
Tell me.
We are now a 1-hour show thanks to the calls and the interest that we are doing right now.
Excellent.
We're very happy about this.
Yes.
So now we're able to bring on more guests, actually have longer to truly get the information and details out there.
And that was the thing we were getting a lot of. It's like, man, this is good, but we need more. So we're just so happy and just so blessed to, in a very short order, to be able to offer an additional 30 minutes. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, let's go and take care of business.
Okay. So since we've got our title sponsor, Heifer USA International, again, we can't thank them enough. If you don't know anything about Heifer International USA, I advise you to go to heifer.org. You can actually donate. You can see all the great things that they're doing at Heifer. Heifer is global headquarters is in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and their 2,500 acre plus ranch is in Perryville, Arkansas. So again, I challenge you to check out Heifer International and all the wonderful things they're doing globally.
Absolutely. Some great information from their websites to their podcasts, some great things that not only can you learn from, you can actually do in your farm, your area, or what you could plan to aspire to do.
Absolutely, and people have to understand it's basically obviously with COVID, it's a training facility, meaning that if you want to learn how to properly raise grass-fed cattle or grass-fed pork, they will actually show you those practices on how to do it correctly. And as a matter of fact, and we'll save that for next time, but next week we will have a representative from Heifer International on the show next week, and more specifically talking about Mississippi. And we got farmers out there who have at least 37 acres of land in Mississippi that could possibly be eligible to get into the Heifer USA swine program.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity. It's ground floor.
Yep, so a lot of good stuff coming. Heifer, we thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. But now, let's get to the man of the hour. So I'm not going to do a long intro because, to me, this gentleman needs no intro, but we're going to do that. He is a son of a family-owned soybean, corn, and wheat farm in Southeast Virginia. He is 37 years with USDA Department of Agriculture as Director of USDA Office of Civil Rights under the Clinton as well as the Obama administration from 97 until the mid-2000s. And without further ado, I'm going to let him talk about all the wonderful things he's doing. None other we have on the line than
Yes,
Mr. Lloyd Wright.
The Lloyd Wright.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning,
Welcome to Ag
Lloyd.
and
Good
Culture.
morning.
How are you?
Good morning. Doing well.
Glad to be here. There's so many different things, Mr. Wright, we can dive into. But just first of all, for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your pedigree, please just expound a little bit on who you are and what you've been doing as it relates to agriculture.
Well, in addition to the years that I spent working with USDA, both in Natural Resource Conservation Service, and at the end of my career, I was Director of Civil Rights for the Department of Ag. But since I've retired, I've spent most of my time as a volunteer trying to help Black farmers. And actually, we have an organization that is about 20 years old that was created, made up primarily of retired government employees. The name of it is the Lloyd Wright Black Farmer Coalition. And we work with politicians on policy and programs, and we do some encouraging Congress to take steps to try to save the few remaining Black farmers. To me, to a large extent, Black farmers are endangered species.
Absolutely.
Having declined from almost 1 million down to about 38,000.
Right.
Yeah. So so that's what I spend my time doing at the present time.
Yeah. And just on that stat alone, Mr. Wright, from 1910 to 1997, Black farmers lost approximately 90% of all land that Black farmers own. And a lot of that was largely due in part because of financial reasons. I mean, 90%. I mean, it's one thing to lose 15, 20%, 30, but to hear 90%, where does that put the state of Black farming? Where are Black farmers right now if we're still having trouble with access to capital? Well,
I would say almost endangered species in that not only have we lost, we're still losing.
Yes.
We're the only group not gaining of the social disadvantaged groups. All the rest of them are actually gaining, both in terms of number and in terms of land. Blacks are not, and really the cause of the decline of both Black farmers and loss of land is discrimination. And I tell folk, immediately after the Civil War, we did fair in accumulating land and farms, because it was mostly labor. If you had enough kids, you could farm a few acres.
Sure.
But over time, that was closed down around 1910, to be honest. Actually, we reached our peak in terms of Black farms in 1920. But during that period, it was the beginning or in the middle of Jim Crow, I should say.
Yes.
And with where, to a large extent, violence, where folk were really trying to put us back in slavery.
Sure.
Yes.
There were almost 4,000 lynchings, where Blacks didn't do what whites want done, or didn't sell them the land or work on their farms, they were lynched. And we had the Great Migration from the South, as you well know.
Yes.
People, moved to save their necks, more or less, which is part of the reason we have all the air property. But in either case, in the process, we lost farms. We couldn't get loans. When we got to the place where we needed money to purchase equipment, when equipment became available, or land when you needed a little more land to pay for it, the whites could get loans, but we could not.
Wow.
And there were some sources, private, and a few religious institutions that helped us earlier on, but the government programs set up to help small and struggling farmers help the whites, not the Blacks.
Wow.
And really, and it hasn't changed. I mean, I would like to say that when Jim Crow officially ended in '64, and I tell folk I grew up under Jim Crow, where you couldn't even go to the office, depending on where it was located. When I started to work, by the way, for the federal government, there were only 81 black NRCS employees in the whole country.
In the whole country, Lloyd? 84?
The whole country.
In the whole country of America?
Right. Of soil conservation NRCS employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the 81. Now, most of the rest of them were, even if they had a degree, they were doing manual labor at plant material centers, cleaning buildings, and et cetera.
Right.
But at least they were on the payroll. So what the point is, the workforce out there was all white. In Virginia, we had 2 Soil Conservation Service employees. They were both on the campus at Virginia State when I arrived. And I started the college in 1960. And that remained so. I went to work in upstate New York because Virginia wouldn't hire me. They were not hiring blacks to work in the field. Wow. They had their 2 black employees. So when you look at the infrastructure, loans and other things that were given and provided by the Department of Agriculture, we had all white committees out there and all white staff. And in the South, where most of the blacks are located, too many of those white committeemen and employees didn't mean us well.
Right.
And so we didn't get services, we didn't get technical assistance, we didn't get loans, and then a lot of trickery was used to acquire our land.
Wow.
And the concern that I have, first, is still going on. The second is that there's a movement to some extent to change history, in that I just finished reading a report where they use some of the oppression and discrimination of blacks to justify taking some action maybe in the next farm bill. But then that report start using, this is what happened to people of color. And then they said, this is what happened to people who are socially disadvantaged. And then they got to underserved. Except for American Indians and blacks, most of the discrimination and oppression really didn't happen to them. But the way the recommendations and programs are drafted is done to help everyone else. And we've already seen that happen to the 2501 program, which when that was designed, it was to primarily provide information and technical assistance to blacks who were not getting it.
Right.
And now, it's more difficult for black organizations to even get money out of that
than
pot.
ever.
And Lloyd, and on that as well, they're adding more groups into that small pot. They're not expanding the dollars as much, but they're putting more groups in, And with that, what little slice we had is now down to a trickle of bread, not even a crumb. And yet we still have to compete for that.
Yeah.
Right. And even worse, when you put all those groups together and then you provide services to them. Many of them are opposed even to outreach and affirmative programs, but they're part of that group. And so you put them all together and provide some services to those, primarily the ones who are not black. And then you, at the end of the day, say, look what we did for this group. Yes,
Right.
you did. You did it for all of the folk who've never been discriminated against.
Right.
But who looks great, but the blacks who are the folk with the history of discrimination still didn't get services.
Absolutely.
And so really they dilute the presence of blacks in it, and then you're able to show accomplishments by providing services to all of the subgroups except black. And I see that, I'm sorry, I think that is dangerous, and it's up and coming at the present time, and that some folk are convinced that you cannot use race as a basis for emphasizing certain kinds of affirmative programs.
Right.
And I tell them that race, and really race as it relates to blacks, was the only factor used when they denied programs.
Yes.
I grew up in the deep South in Virginia, and once you get out of the commuting area of Washington, D.C. and in Virginia, it is as deep south.
It's deep south as you get. That's right. It's very rural.
Yeah, and it was the home of the Confederacy. So and that attitude is still the same. And when I grew up in Virginia, if you were 1/64th black, you were black and denied services, and if they had a sign up for drinking water, for colors, you went to
Wow.
that one. In some
Wow.
places you couldn't go in at all. It was not much different than Mississippi.
Right.
But they used race as a basis to deny services.
Mr. Wright, if you would, hold that thought for us. We're up against the break.
Yes.
Ag and Culture is coming back, being proudly sponsored by Heifer USA International.
Heifer USA is a nonprofit that supports small-scale, sustainable livestock businesses, and we are currently seeking individuals interested in pastured pork production in the state of Mississippi. Applicants should have access to at least 35 acres of land and be willing to participate in in-depth training, both online and in person at Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas. To learn about our operation, check out the Pastured Pigs playlist on the Heifer USA YouTube channel, or contact Farmer Engagement Specialist Ruth Canada at 501-391-5511.
Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint Farms is to provide the community access to healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds in February. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, city sweet. Hey, welcome back. Block number 2 of our first 1-hour show of agriculture.
I know, and I'm just so excited. And the information that we're receiving now from Lloyd Wright, who, let me say to you guys, you got to read about this man from his history for what he's done and what he's continued to do. But what he's also doing that's so magnificent, he's bringing others along. He's sharing information that he has, and he has been a part of so many programs has been developed that truly help black people. And he will say 1 minute, this is for black people. So no doubt where he stands. And anytime you read, he does not temper his tongue. He's going to tell you like it is, and he's going to bring that to Congress, to state elected officials, to whoever asks. So this is, I'm so proud to be his friend, but also as his mentee to learn so much. And thank you again for everything you do.
37 years of service in the United States Department of Agriculture, Director of USDA Office of Civil Rights under 2 administrations, both the Clinton and Obama administration.
Yes.
Mr. Wright, before we went to the break, we were talking about just growing up in the South. And I think it was a Washington Post article I was reading, I can't remember, but you said something, and I'm kind of paraphrasing. You said if you were black and you were trying to farm and you were south of the Mason-Dixon, by definition, you were discriminated against. Can you elaborate on that, sir?
Yes. I was asked that by the Secretary of Agriculture back in, I think it was 1996, 97, when I became director. How we define and where, how we determine who's been discriminated against. And I said, if you want to cut it short, if you're black, born south of the Mason-Dixon line, and you try to get services from USDA, you've been discriminated against. So then I said, so now we're talking about the degree of discrimination. All of the blacks have been discriminated against. The large ones and the small ones. And it's a matter of degree now. If you go back and look at some of the history, you'll find that the county committees and in some cases the federal agencies were willing to provide limited services to what they call safe Negroes back at that time. And they were the folk who, once they got something, tried to make sure the rest of us didn't. But beyond that, in the masses, if you were born south of the Mason-Dixon line, they discriminated against you. And those impacts are still carrying on. One of the things that we are trying to do in the Policy Center is to look at catch-up programs, I call them, in that when I started to work in 1961, the federal government provided services for drainage, um, clearing hedgerows, increasing the size of fields, land leveling, irrigation, all kinds of programs. Blacks didn't get those services. So they don't have the drainage systems. They don't have the irrigation. So now the policy is if you try to drain land now, you'll be swamp busting. And not only will you not get services, you won't get anything. I mean, you're out of the department for services if you swamp bust. So, and if you have an irrigation system, you can get money to maintain it. But we didn't get one to begin with.
Right.
So unless we have a catch-up program to provide the services and programs and farm infrastructure that were denied us even up in the 60s. You know, this is not ancient history. I lived under some of it, you know, these conditions. So if we don't help farmers catch up and get the infrastructure that was provided to white farmers that were not provided to us, we don't have a level playing field.
Absolutely.
So I would like to see the Farm Bill change so that for black farmers and probably Native Americans who apply for irrigation system, they would be eligible with no regard to present irrigation system.
Right, and on that note, Lloyd, even if you could get into the offices to do the paperwork, it was no guarantee. Actually, the paperwork never got to the areas that it should, because right there at the front line, your application was thrown in the trash or filed in 13, as they say. So, you know, they says, well, how can you didn't turn anything in? There was nothing there. There's nothing of record to show. And then when you start saying, yes, we did, you were still denied because there was no proof. There was no paperwork. Now, you mentioned the Policy Center. Last week we had Eloy's own Ms. Bates, and she gave us some great insights. But can you share a little bit more about that? And again, why we're still doing this and the importance of the Policy Center?
Yeah, for a little background on the Policy Center. You know, back about 20 years ago, a guy named Pearlie Reed, who's passed on, and myself and a handful of others, we made an effort to try to consolidate and get an agreement from the black organizations on the policies and programs needed to help the black farming community. And we were concerned in that some of the recommendations provided to Congress for farm bills were inconsistent, and some of them were actually opposed to others. So we came up with the idea of having a black policy center. It got changed when it got approved in the Farm Bill to be social disadvantaged. But the purpose of the center is to first, do research to get the facts straight, so that when we ask Congress to do something, that the basis for our recommendation is well-founded. And was pointed out earlier, we need to read and have facts. We want to make sure we provide Congress facts when we ask them to make some changes.
Right.
And then we want to develop policy recommendations for the Farm Bill and other kinds of policy efforts to ensure that we address that past history. So a bunch of us got together and worked on that, and over a few years, we were finally able to get it in the 2014 Farm Bill. Your congressman there in Mississippi, Congressman Chairman Benny Thompson,
Yes,
was really the lead in getting that done. And appropriately, we located it in Mississippi, and Chairman Thompson is still very supportive, as well as the Black Caucus, of having the center. And it is growing and starting to achieve what I think those who envisioned it had in mind.
Yes.
All the players are not willing to play yet.
Yeah.
And that we still have a few outsiders who would like to run their own separate program with their own narrow interests that is not necessarily in the interest of black farmers across the country.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll always have that.
Yeah.
But when I see efforts trying to be done outside and independent of the Policy Center as it relates to research around black interests, it is somewhat dangerous. And But I guess we'll never stop that.
Right.
We'll always have part of that. But the center is becoming recognized for the place to go to get information and upcoming policy related to black farmers. And for the coming up Farm Bill, we'll have some recommendations to address the needs of black farmers and social disadvantaged farmers in general, but it'll primarily be related to blacks.
Right.
But no, we're proud of the Policy Center, and I'm on the board.
Yes.
And have been on the board, and hopefully when we get the virus behind us, I'll be able to go in person to meetings. But
That's
I
right.
missed out.
That's
but,
right.
but yeah, it's a good organization and doing a good job, and it's new. I mean, we got set up in 15, 16,
Yeah,
2000.
only 5 years old.
Only
Yeah.
5 years old, so we're still growing. We have a good staff and good
Yes.
leadership, and really doing a good job. Have a good board, and most of them are willing to speak up, if not all.
It's not all.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
They're speaking up, and when we talk about this, and you said it well, there are always going to be some organizations out there, but for the mass of what we're doing, the corporation and those groups are in 100%, and they're working hard, and they're disseminating information that is correct information. So what you're getting and receiving through the Policy Center is correct. You can back it up with the data. But the great part about the center is that the research is being done throughout our historical black colleges and universities, most of it, and being able to utilize the brain power that we never got to do before to actually get it, and the recommendations and information goes in as facts. So we're able to put more out there for students to know. But Mr. Lloyd, you said something else. We present this information to Congress. And a lot of times, this information is the first time they've seen these stats because of the misinformation
Yes.
that they see every day.
Yeah, and really, the Policy Center cannot do the lobbying job. Once they complete the research and develop policy recommendations, they really about at the end of the road for them. So the rest of us have to get together, organizations, community-based organizations. A little organization that I work with here, and actually I work with two organizations. There's a Black employee organization of past NRCS employees that we started back in the 90s, and I was actually the first president of that organization. But that organization is doing work as well. And then there's a number of other Black organizations in town that take that information and work with Congress. Although the report that we come up with at the Policy Center is mailed directly to the Black Caucus and others, and including the two ag committees. But beyond that, the rest of us have to work with Congress then to encourage them to do what need to be done. And it's coming at them from a number of angles, by the way. And so there are other folk out there with other interests. And so we're going to have to work hard to make sure that the people that are in place to make changes understand what need to be done and why, and move out to do it, because there are other people who have their own interests that's trying to get in on the edges to do things that really would benefit a narrow group of folk, not necessarily the masses. But for example, one of the report I just read didn't mention debt at all. One of the things we need to do for the Black community is to do something with this heavy debt load that they're carrying, some of it with USDA and some not.
Yes.
It was debt that should have been forgiven.
Yes.
Under Pigfoot, but they didn't get it.
Right.
And then they were going to get it when I was back there in 2009, 10, and 11. But we didn't. Folk got in the way to make sure that we didn't get it. And then we had a law passed last year, American Rescue Plan, where debt forgiveness program, and that didn't get implemented.
And that's what I wanted to speak to you about. That's a great segment. You'll read my mind. Is that with the American Rescue Plan, we were talking about this last week, is the fact of this was put in place to give debt relief to a lot of our Black farmers. But yet and still, there were 5 white farmers who found a federal judge to basically enter an injunction saying that they were being discriminated against. So even when we had something signed into law to give us that debt relief, we still don't have that debt relief. Is that correct, Mr. Wright?
That is correct. And I blame them a little, but I blame the Secretary of Agriculture the most, in that any other secretary other than Vilsack would have implemented the program prior to those suits being filed. I'm part of a group that drafted a letter to the secretary on April the 8th, when they were playing with their fingers on how to stretch the 20% to make it enough to pay the taxes. And we basically said, let's not worry about the taxes. Let's forgive the debt, give them 20%. We'll worry about the taxes later. Actually, the Policy Center is in the process of coming up with some guidelines and to help farmers find the information they need to file taxes to make that 20% enough. Let's not worry about that little detail. Let's go ahead and implement and get this done. Two months later, actually at the end of May, the first lawsuit was filed. And then there was another couple of weeks before the injunction. There were plenty of time to pull the trigger and forgiven the debt. So yes, I expect white farmers, I mean, for 400 years, they've been doing that to us. So we should have expected that. What I didn't expect is an administration put in with the black vote that gave us a secretary who failed us in the first 8 years he was there, and he's not going to do anything now. You can pass laws, but for example, in the 2008 Farm Bill, there were provisions put in to require agencies to collect information by race and sex and et cetera.
Mr. Wright, before we go any further, I want you to hold that thought. I want you to come back to that. We definitely need to touch on that. Hold that point. You're watching Ag and Culture, proudly sponsored by Heifer International USA.
Heifer USA is a nonprofit that supports small-scale, sustainable livestock businesses, and we are currently seeking individuals interested in pastured pork production in the state of Mississippi. Applicants should have access to at least 35 acres of land and be willing to participate in in-depth training, both online and in person at Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas. To learn about our operation, check out the Pastured Pigs playlist on the Heifer USA YouTube channel, or contact Farmer Engagement Specialist Ruth Canada at 501-391-5511.
Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint Farms is to provide the community access to healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce, or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds in February. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, city sweet. Hey, welcome back to Ag and Culture, and we're talking to Mr. Lloyd Wright, who is former director of the USDA Office of Civil Rights under the Clinton and Obama administration. And before we left, Mr. Wright, and I want you to pick up with that, we were talking about the American Rescue Plan and how our Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, did a couple of maybe unorthodox moves that could have possibly been done and put in place before any of these injunctions started. So you just maybe pick back up with kind of where we stopped on that point.
Well, I was saying that the 2008 Farm Bill required the department to collect information by race, sex, and et cetera, by individual, by county, by state, and then at the national level. The Vilsack became secretary in 2009 after this bill was passed. He didn't implement it. So when we got around to implementing the American Rescue Plan, one of the first things they had to do was to send out forms to have people designate who they were. Had he implemented the 2008 Farm Bill, this would have been done. So he would immediately been able to provide the debt relief. So having failed to follow the law, and it's still the law, just not being followed. There's a lot of things in the Farm Bill that this secretary has not implemented. But having failed to do that in 2009 and his whole 8 years, he tried to do that in a short period when he got ready to implement the American Rescue Plan, had people sign forms, designate who they were.
Right.
But that should have already been in the system. The law required that it be in the system. But in either way, he fumbled the ball, and he surrounded himself with folk who are going to help him fumble the ball. And both in OGC and in the agencies, these folk probably told him why he needed to do all of these, detailed things that were not necessary in order to run the clock out. Because in that letter, that April 8th letter, we made it clear that, before someone or something stopped us from implementing this program, let's get on with it. I mean, some of us know a little bit about history. Some of us, we're still waiting for our 40 acres and a mule. Farmers are still waiting for the debt relief. Of the 22,000 who signed up for Pickford 1, only 371 of them got debt relief. Okay, and those farmers, a lot of them have gone out of business, passed on, lost their farms. So, and then in 2010, we tried to look at the same farmers who still had debt, and in the process of trying to address that, the problem we ran into that the statute had expired.
Right.
So we had an effort to correct that. We went to the Black Caucus, Chairman Thompson and others. They passed a law in the House to extend the statute to cover the period for which we wanted to do the debt relief, and provided money in the bill to do it. It went over to the Senate and failed. We went back to the House and got it passed again. And then when we tried to work with the Senate, we found that some of the folk who pretend to be helping us were actually putting sand in the gears. So it turns out we never got that statute passed, although the House passed it twice. The Senate, by the way, was controlled by the Democrats and had almost a veto-proof number, there.
Right.
It never got passed because we didn't get help from the Secretary. So we were very concerned when they reappointed him. And for any of us who expect anything good to happen, now he's going to throw money at organizations, but giving money to organizations will not help black farmers.
Right.
These farmers have debt.
Right.
And they've been saddled with it. And some of them who don't have debt with USDA have debt with other folk. That's worse. The equipment's run down. The farms are run down. They just haven't been able to get the resources to operate. The only way you're going to help these black farmers is to give them money. And there's a provision in the American Rescue Plan, Section 1006, to do that. And there's not a lawsuit stopping that right now.
So it could be implemented. That part of it could be implemented tomorrow with the secretary, not with anyone else. So Lloyd, in hearing that, let me just first say this. When we talk about the Farm Bill, a lot of people that's listening think it's just for farmers, but it impacts all of us, not just farmers, but every black person that is on the continent because of what it does and how far it goes in deep. So we're talking about this for black farmers. It affects your community, your churches, because we are the people that live in the communities. And if we can't do to take care of what we have because of how we're doing this, how can we prevail? So it's important that people realize, John Q, you and I, that we have to make our voices known. And that's by calling and talking and texting and speaking out. To say we want this done, we have to be the one to make this movement. Right. Just like it was in the 60s and when change happened, it had to be from the people. Yeah. So we have to understand the importance of that. And being a black farmer in this extinct time of being a black farmer and still pushing to make sure that our community has healthy foods that makes us healthier to help extend our lives is so important. But the reason, and you say this, tell me again, Lloyd, the reason that the USDA Ag did not collect the data before the bill we didn't pass is because they didn't want Congress to know. They didn't want anybody to know what black farmers was not getting. So if they didn't say, we did 100,000 loans, but in that 100,000 loans, it does not say X number went to blacks and to other minorities. Right. So this way they were saying, we're doing great. Look at all this money we're putting out. Look at all these farmers we're helping. But they had nothing to show by design that they were not helping black farmers.
Absolutely.
It's business as usual.
Yeah. And that information was supposed to be used to do compliance reviews. You know, when I was director of civil rights, I had a compliance team. We went out to a few states. And I remember in our compliance reviews, we found more folk had been discriminated against who didn't complain than who did. Some of these folk are afraid to complain. Mm-hmm. But a compliance review, if you do collect that data that was required in the 2008 Farm Bill, and then use that to do compliance reviews, you'll find problems that you won't find even through the system of filing complaints. Wow. But we're not implementing that. We didn't implement it because even under black president, we had a secretary who elected not to. Yeah. And then to put him back in and expect something different. Well, what they say that, doing the same thing over and over again,
different results.
It's insanity.
Based on insanity, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
All right. Well, I don't know why we put him back. We're not going to get any. Let me talk a little bit about 106.
Okay.
Which is, there are two provisions that were designed primarily to help black and social disadvantage. And by the way, that item dealing with debt forgiveness and the payments was lifted from the Justice for Black Farmer Act. And that was initially drafted by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. And over time, Senator Booker took it over, and it's been introduced. And then Senator Warnock lifted a couple provisions from that,
right,
and then put it in the American Rescue Plan, and changed it from black to social disadvantaged.
Right.
And it had to be probably because probably couldn't get it done otherwise. Mm-hmm. But be that as it may, the first provision, the 1005, was the debt forgiveness for social disadvantaged farmers.
Right.
So all black, Latino, Native Americans, Asian farmers would have had their debt forgiven, both the guaranteed debt and the direct debt, loan storage, and et cetera,
right,
with a 20% payment for taxes. Mm-hmm. Now, that's on hold. The lawsuit stopped that.
Right.
But it didn't stop 1006. And there were 5 sections to 1006. And the secretary is implementing 4 of those. I mean, he gave out $70-some million to organizations. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think even the Policy Center got some of that money.
A small amount?
And a small amount. And the university got some, and a whole bunch of folks. So he's implementing 4 sections. Mm-hmm. The only section he's not implementing is the section that would provide, which is item 5, which would provide direct payments to farmers for past discrimination and bias.
Wow.
And I think at the department, they think if they give enough money to the community-based organizations, they'll make farmers happy.
No.
It won't.
No.
And I call that the trickle-down theory. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how much bread you put on the table of the community-based organizations, very few crumbs will fall to the table, to the floor for black farmers. If you want to help a black farmer, you got to give them the money. And it was designed to do just that. And that's what item 5 of section 1006 would do. We're working with Congress, trying to get them to encourage the secretary, because we can't get his attention, to go ahead and implement it. Now, they said, well, a lawsuit will probably stop it. So be it. I mean, I could decide not to get out of bed in the morning thinking I might stumble my toe, but I get out. And so maybe it gets stopped. But until then, let's provide money to the farmers. He could start that tomorrow. The only reason he's not, he doesn't want to.
And that's
no one is forcing him to do it.
That's the other thing that concerns me, is that we already have a razor thin margin of majority in the House and the Senate, and it seems like every day is getting smaller and smaller. And I was asking the question a couple of weeks ago, if not now, then when, Mr. Wright, that we can get this relief?
Probably never. Like I said, we'll probably get this in the same package we get the 40 acres and a mule.
Wow.
And having waited over 150 years for that. So I would say probably never. In that even under the Democratic administrations, which is better than the Republicans by a long mile, we still don't get implementation for blacks. We get it for some other folk. A lot of other folk get help, but not the folk who really had the damage.
Yeah.
And still have the damage. And still have that. So Lloyd, what is it that I know? What is it that we can do? What is people that's listening and people we're talking to? What can they do? I mean, the voices have to be heard. What is one thing that they could do today?
Well, I think if we could get all of the blacks, and including their organizations, to work together, I think we could get 006 implemented. But we have some folk who are so concerned with the trickle-down change that they get from the department that they don't join. Let me put it another way. The letter that was drafted encouraging the secretary on April 8th to go ahead and implement this thing before someone stopped them was signed by 52 organizations. None of those organizations received one nickel of the money he handed out when he started handing that $72 million out. So basically, he gave it to the folk who laid in the cut, who would not sign on. Those were the organizations that got the money. And those are the organizations now will sing his praise. They don't represent black farmers. They are concerned with their own well-being. So what we need to do is get all of us to work. For those who claim that they're trying to help black farmers, then you should try to help black farmers. If you want to help a black farmers, I know a couple of black farmers who tried to get enough money and was hoping they'd get enough money to plant last year. When one of them almost got things lined up and got something with NRCS for some assistance, and his tractor broke down. He didn't have enough money to fix it. If we go ahead and implement 1006 Section 5, we could give that person a few $100,000, and they deserve more than that. They deserve millions. We could give money to these farmers and save them.
Yes.
As we sit here and discuss this, farmers are going out of business. It's so long you can hold on under all of the stress.
That's right.
Okay, so the longer we talk about it, the problem takes care of itself.
Right.
And that the farmers will be all going out. Some of them are dying off, and others are losing their land.
Yeah.
We could start tomorrow giving money to those farmers if the secretary wanted to do it. Now, you can go in there and ask your staff, tell me how I can avoid doing this. And they'll help you do that. Or you could ask them to tell me how you can do it. I never asked my staff to tell me how to avoid doing something. You tell me how to do it. Now, maybe you got to make a change here and there to do it, but tell me how to do it. And if you start off with that attitude, he could start paying black farmers almost too late now. In some parts of the country, they'll be planting here in a few weeks.
Yes, sir.
But for those that we can save for another year, if we start giving money out to them, and there's money there.
Yes.
The revised bill was going to make $750 million available for that item.
Mr. Wright, hold that thought. We're definitely going to come back. So much good information with former Director of USDA Office of Civil Rights, Mr. Lloyd Wright. This is Ag and Culture, being proudly sponsored by Heifer International USA. See you after the break.
Yes.
Heifer USA is a nonprofit that supports small-scale, sustainable livestock businesses, and we are currently seeking individuals interested in pastured pork production in the state of Mississippi. Applicants should have access to at least 35 acres of land and be willing to participate in in-depth training, both online and in person at Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas. To learn about our operation, check out the Pastured Pigs playlist on the Heifer USA YouTube channel, or contact Farmer Engagement Specialist Ruth Canada at 501-391-5511.
Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint Farms is to provide the community access to healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce, or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds in February. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, city sweet. Hey, welcome back to our last segment of Ag and Culture. I am LeGrand Elliott, your host, and my lovely co-host is...
I'm Cindy AYERS-ELLIOTT.
Proudly being sponsored by Heifer International USA, this segment of the show. We're talking with Mr. Lloyd Wright, former director of the USDA Office of Civil Rights under the Clinton and Obama administrations. And Mr. Wright, just jump back into kind of where you were and laying the smackdown, if you will, on kind of where we are, but more importantly, we see what the doom and gloom is. Is there any ray of sunshine at the end of the tunnel?
Well,
take your time. Take your time.
I don't know if I see sunshine or not. I had hoped that once we were able to edge out a couple votes in Georgia, so we'd have a majority.
That's right.
We'd get something done.
That's right.
That hasn't helped us too much yet. So I don't know. And I see things spinning backwards to some extent. I tell folk, when blacks did somewhat well for a few years after the Civil War in terms of accumulating wealth and land and et cetera. But then they took our vote, and once they took the vote, they passed state laws to take everything else. They can ready to take the vote again, and if they follow up with the kind of laws that they did. And that's where Jim Crow came in the first time. This might be Jim Crow too.
Wow.
So I don't know how much light I see. But we still got a few years under this administration. And as it relates to black farmers, I see some hope. If the organizations could forget their own personal little nitpick that won't matter in the long term and work together, I think we could convince the right kind of people to let's implement Section 1006. 1006 is more important to the black farmer than 1005. What most people don't know probably is that had the debt been forgiven as it should have been, it would only have impacted 8% of the black farmers. So 92% would have gotten zero. The only place the rest of them, that 92% going to get help, is from 1006. It is more important to the black community than 1005. It's more important than the debt relief because those who left USDA, got driven out, can get help from 1006, but they're not getting anything from debt relief. And let me give you a little bit of a capture on who have loans. Initially, we thought that there were somewhere in the area of 15,000, 16,000 blacks that were going to benefit. But when they got around to looking at the numbers, when we got ready to implement, 47% of the social disadvantaged farmer loans with FSA are Native American, 26% Hispanics, only 18% are black. So if you implement 1005, it'll only, of the social disadvantage, only 18%. And then Asians and others were 89%, so I have to make up the 100%. So look, we were going to get very little because they had, to get a debt forgiven, you have to have one.
Yes.
We went to sleep. We went to sleep and forgot that they weren't providing them, for God's sake. They didn't provide many under the first Vilsack administration, and they provided even less under the Trump administration. So when we got around to looking at the pool, we didn't have many people in it. So we spent a lot of time talking about debt relief, but we're not going to get much of it. Wow. It's not going to have an impact on the black community. The impact on the black community will come from implementing 1006, which we could start doing tomorrow.
The secretary. Just by saying that. Yes. So, Lord, are you? But should we not right now encourage more black farmers and more black people or more new beginning farmers and ranchers to now go in and apply for loans under some of these programs? We got so much money in.
Right. Well, yes, we should go in and apply, but we need to change in the Farm Bill and so we'll look at this when we in the policy center. There are restrictions. I mean, on how many years you can continue to get a loan. We should remove that for Black farmers and Native Americans. That if you stumbled and missed a payment or there's been a loss, you're out. But that was caused by the department. I mean, if you read the 1982 Commission on Civil Rights report, it's called The Decline of Black Farming. You know, they said that USDA was a major cause of the decline of black farming. So they run you out with little games to get you in trouble, and now I got you. So you can't come back because we got you. Yeah. So we got to get rid of the part of the Farm Bill that permit them to do that. Right. So they can come back and get loans. So you're right, they should, but a lot of them are not eligible because of past, struggles that they had.
Right.
But what we can do is implement 1006, and all of the organizations should unite in doing that, and that's not happening. Some of them are very pleased with the money being thrown at them, which they're not going to do very much to help black farmers. And at the end of the day, they'll still be losing their land. So I would hope that we unify. If you want to know what I think we can do, is unify and try to force the secretary to do something that we shouldn't have to force him to do.
Right.
And that's follow the law.
And I agree with that.
He's known well not how to do it in the past.
Right.
So I don't know why we should expect anything different.
So if this does not happen, and you talk about that from 1910 to 1997, where we're less than 10% of black farmland in the United States, which leads me to my next issue with air property. Once they're not giving us the loans anymore, we can't go buy the tractor, we can't go buy the combine, we can't go buy the fertilizer. So now we're going under. Are there ways or avenues that if someone who's come into property such as this and it may be in limbo, can you maybe expound on that and maybe even some of the relative technical support that's out there to help folks kind of unweave the weave of that? Because obviously if we're less than 10% and we have another generation who may not be non-farmer generation taking over these lands, but it's all tied up in this air property, what would you suggest or say to someone not to wait till it gets to that point? What can you just share that they could kind of be getting themselves armed with to be able to fight this fight?
Yeah. Well, I think in the long term, what we need to do is provide education and technical assistance to families, so that although all of us think we might live forever, that's just proven not to be the case. We're all going to leave at some point, and if you don't want someone else to decide what happened to your property, then you need to, and we need to work with folk, provide them with services, so that we can start to decrease the problem. But we have a large one already on our hand to deal with. And there's still a lot of air property out there. Yeah. And I think there's a couple of things that would need to be done. I'm not very much in favor of loans to settle the air property deal. And that, in my opinion, I tell folk, giving a loan to a person that's already in trouble and underwater is like giving a glass of water to that drowning person. Right. Not going to help them a lot. Yes. So I think you need to give grants to some of these farmers because this stuff was done with segregation and discrimination by USDA and by state and local governments, and we ought to help. I'm not suggesting that we help by providing enough money to buy all of the other heirs, but I think a token of money, a grant, should be put in with technical assistance and work trying to resolve that portion. And then the portion dealing with USDA, we need to look at if the person who is in control of the land and paying the taxes is willing to sign up for a program, except for any long-term program that would put a lien on the property. Short of that, that signature should be adequate for participating in all the other programs. Putting in an irrigation system, putting in drainage, or putting in
waterways. Waterways and things. Lord, hold that thought. Yeah, hold that thought. We have some on the screen coming from listeners, and we had one from John. Hi, John, who's a fireman in the city, by the way, and putting out a lot of fires, unfortunately, this time of year. He asked, with so much working against black farmers, how do we get younger people of the black community involved and stepping up in a proper way to help support?
Yeah.
How does they want to know how does
how do we get, just like we're trying to do here, how do we get more younger folk of color into farming and get them on the right path? I guess we've seen it done wrong so many times. Someone who's young and ambitious who wants to get into agriculture, what just seeds of advice that you can maybe even give someone who wants to get that? And then how do we get our younger folk more involved with agriculture, letting them know it's more to farming than just the operational side of it?
So many degrees. Yes, please.
Oh.
I think there are two pieces to this. I think one is how we get them to support the kind of efforts that would help black farmers. And obviously we need information. I tell folk, history has not been taught in the schools. I mean, I never read a book through high school that even mentioned slavery. So we don't teach history, and then a lot of states are passing laws now to make sure we're not going to teach it. So we're going to have to find our own ways to inform the younger generations of how your family members got to where they are. It wasn't that they were lazy. They made sure you didn't get education. And where I grew up, they had 3 white high schools in the county and 0 blacks until 1941. That was the first class to graduate. So my parents got 7th grade education. There was no other school available. So they tried not to provide you education and give you a sophisticated form to fill out. So we need to let the young generation know that it was not your parents, being lazy and stumbling and whatever. They did what they could do with what they had, and white folk made sure they didn't have very much. And so we need to get them to work and encourage and remember that when they go to the polls. And then the second thing is to get young folk in agriculture. Even in our family, we're having some concerns with younger folk. But most of us are old, like myself, that's still farming. We, to be honest with you, we haven't painted a very rosy picture for the young folk. They looked at their parents struggling, losing their land and whatever. It hasn't been the kind of picture that has encouraged young folk to come in. Agriculture is an excellent field to get in, and I think we need to show the young folk the good side of agriculture.
Yes.
You need to understand the playing field, and that there's still a lot of folk out there that don't mean you well, but you need to go in it with your eyes open, and you need to do the right kinds of things. You following the present technology, so you want to get all the education you can and technical assistance, and use USDA programs. Some of these programs are readily available. So I would hope that we have an effort to do that. Yes.
Yep. Mr. Wright, man, this hour went by really fast, but I can't begin to thank you for just being such an inspiration to us and to continue to fight the good fight. We thank you so much for coming on Ag and Culture this morning, being sponsored by Heifer International USA. That's going to do it for episode 5 of Ag and Culture. We'll see you next week with episode number 6 as we talk to Heifer International. See you.
Yes. Thank you, Lloyd.
I'm LeGrand Elliott.
I'm Cindy Ayers-ELLIOTT.
And we have a brand new show called Ag and Culture. We'll be discussing all things agriculture,
but more specifically how it affects farmers and ranchers of color with national and local guests.
And of course, we're talking culture, food, wine, health, politics, education, and so much more.
Join us for informative and fun conversation with guests from all over the country.
It's a fresh new show, Ag and Culture, every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. on the East, and 7 a.m. on the West.
Watch us on our YouTube channel, MS Footprint Farms.
And on WeBelieve.global. Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint Farms is to provide the community access to healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds in February. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, city sweet.
Heifer USA is a nonprofit that supports small-scale, sustainable livestock businesses, and we are currently seeking individuals interested in pastured pork production in the state of Mississippi. Applicants should have access to at least 35 acres of land and be willing to participate in in-depth training, both online and in person at Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas. To learn about our operation, check out the Pastured Pigs playlist on the Heifer USA YouTube channel, or contact Farmer Engagement Specialist Ruth Canada at 501-391-55